சீக்கிரம் முடியும் डायरेक्ट उसी को किया। हाँ
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Loshna. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the regional business leader for the Women's Health Ultrasound business in Southeast Asia. Firstly, I would like to thank every one of you for joining us today on this 6-part web series on fetal echocardiography. More than 1.3 million babies worldwide are born with a congenital heart defect each year. The fetal heart is complicated, but with ultrasound technology that evaluates it, it's getting easier. With half or more congenital heart defects missed prenatally each year, we would like to ensure that you have the right tools to help save your most precious patients. So with this, we took the opportunity to engage Dr. Balu Vaidyanathan, a pediatric cardiologist, to share with us his expertise on protocols for fetal echo. He has kindly agreed to discuss how he personally assesses patients in his daily clinical practice. I truly hope everyone finds this webinar beneficial, and with that, I would like to start the webinar with Dr. Balu Vaidyanathan.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Professor Balu Vaidyanathan, a pediatric and fetal cardiologist from Cochin, India. I welcome you to this fetal echocardiography webinar series organized by the Asian segment of GE Healthcare. This is the first lecture of a series of 6 lectures in this webinar. In this lecture, we shall deal with the protocols for fetal heart evaluation, both the basic and the advanced. Let us begin this webinar series by offering a prayer for all the human beings and the forms of life in the world. We are going through an unprecedented difficult times in the form of the COVID-19 pandemic, and let us sincerely pray that the world will get over this pandemic as soon as possible. We are going to talk about congenital heart defects or birth defects of the heart. For those of you who are not familiar with this terminology, it is important to understand that congenital heart defects constitute one of the most common types of congenital malformations in newborn infants. The prevalence is about 6 to 8 per thousand live births. About 25% of these problems are critical in the first few months of life. Now, congenital heart defects are an important cause of infant mortality, especially in countries where the IMR is low, that is less than 20. Now, in the Asian countries, due to large populations, there are a large number of children with congenital heart defects. Hence, it's an important child health problem in low and middle income countries as well. Now, what is the optimal time to diagnose a major or severe form of congenital heart defect? That is, during the pregnancy stage itself. We can talk about the fetal heart evaluation from different levels of expertise. At the primary level, at the very basic level, we are talking about screening for heart defects in all pregnancies. These are usually done by obstetricians or trained medical officers or sometimes trained sonologists. Then we have a secondary level of expertise where the sonologist is expected to diagnose the heart defect, provide a basic counseling to the family, and then refer the patient to a detailed evaluation by a fetal cardiologist. Most of these evaluations are done by experts in fetal medicine, radiology, or trained obstetricians. Then we have a tertiary level, which is usually at the level of a pediatric cardiac care center. Here, the evaluation of the fetal heart is performed by fetal cardiologists who are either trained pediatric cardiologists or highly specialized fetal medicine experts. Now we can discuss the approaches for antenatal screening for congenital heart defects from two perspectives. The first is to screen everyone, which is a low-risk approach. And the second is to offer a targeted high-risk study to a certain selected groups of populations who are known to have a higher risk for having a heart defect in the fetus. So what are these high-risk cases? Well, these constitute the indications for fetal echocardiography. It is important to remember that only 10 to 20% of all heart defects occur in these high-risk pregnancies. The majority of the heart defects, about 80%, occur in pregnancies which are low risk with no risk factors at all. From the high-risk features can be discussed from three perspectives. First is from the fetal aspect. From the indications from the fetal perspective include whenever there is an abnormal heart on screening ultrasound. That is perhaps one of the most important reasons. Presence of extracardiac anomalies involving the gastrointestinal tract, spina bifida, and so on. Chromosomal anomalies including the Batrel anomalies, trisomies, Dijot syndrome, etc. Non-immune hydrops is an important indication for fetal echo because one of the common causes of non-immune hydrops could be heart defects. Irregular heartbeat, increased first trimester nuchal translucency, an abnormal cardiac axis, and infants who are conceived by IVF or ICSI all will constitute a relatively high-risk group. From the maternal perspective, the important indications are maternal heart defects, maternal autoimmune disease with autoantibodies which can damage the fetal conduction system, exposure to teratogens, metabolic disorders like diabetes mellitus or phenylketonuria, and exposure to intrauterine infections, particularly during the first trimester. And the third is a familial group. A previous child with congenital heart disease, paternal congenital heart disease, or family history of Mendelian syndromes like tuberous sclerosis, Noonan syndrome, or Dijot syndrome. So these are the high-risk pregnancies where one can consider a direct referral for a detailed fetal echocardiography or detailed heart evaluation right in the very beginning. Now let us see the first case scenario. So this is a typical screening scenario. So the patient is a 22-year-old primary gravida who is married for 1 year. There are no risk factors for congenital heart defect like the ones which we just detailed. There is no family history of heart defects. So the woman needs to undergo a routine ultrasound evaluation at around 18 to 20 weeks pregnancy. Now here, the person who is doing the scan cannot be concerned with just the heart alone. The sonologist has the whole baby to scan, and there are a large number of patients to be scanned in one day. So we cannot devote a humongous amount of time just for the evaluation of one organ. So the screening has to be very brief, very short, and should have a very high sensitivity. So what is recommended is a basic 3-view technique for screening. So the 3 views are the 4-chamber view, the outflow tract, and here we can see the left ventricular outflow tract, and then the 3-vessel view. I shall discuss the salient features of each of these views subsequently. So here we will just understand that for the basic screening, these 3 views will be adequate. Now studies have looked into the cost effectiveness of screening strategies for the fetal heart. People included different strategies like the 4-chamber view with outflow tracts, nuchal translucency, and fetal echocardiography. And this particular study, which is published in 2014 by Pinto et al., showed that the most effective and the least costly strategy was 4-chamber with outflow tract. Hence, for the population-based screening, for screening large populations, a combination of 4-chamber with outflow tracts, which is outflow and 3-vessel, would be the most effective strategy. Now let us move on to a second case scenario which has more risk factors. So this is a 30-year-old primary gravida who is 19 weeks pregnant. There is history of primary infertility for 7 years. This pregnancy has been conceived by artificial reproductive technology. The woman also has history of diabetes mellitus, which is detected at 13 weeks. The first trimester nuchal translucency, the measurement was 3.2 millimeters, so it's somewhat borderline. The other markers were negative, and this lady has been referred to you for a detailed anomaly scan. So what is the recommended protocol in this situation? And one of the most easily applicable protocols which everybody can do are the ISOAP practice guidelines for fetal heart evaluation in the mid-trimester anomaly scans. This has been published in 2013. So let us see this ISOAP protocol in detail. So the ISOAP protocol involves a sweep across the transverse plane of the fetus from the caudal to the cranial direction. So as a part of the sweep, we will see a number of structures which are now shown. So you begin with the situs, which is at the level of the abdomen. Then on the cranial sweep, we get the 4-chamber view. A further cranial sweep will lead you to the outflow tracts. We see the left ventricular and the right ventricular outflow tract, one after the other. After that, we have the 3-vessel view. And finally, we have the 3-vessel tracheal view. So in the ISOAP protocol, by a single sweep in a single plane, you are expected to get these 6 different pictures of the various views of the fetal heart. And if all of them are normal, we can say that the fetal heart is normal from the ISOAP protocol. So we begin our examination with the abdominal situs. So the left and the right are marked. On the leftward side, we will see the stomach, which is marked as ST. The liver, which is marked as LI, is on the right side. Now we can see the aorta and the inferior vena cava, which are marked as A and V respectively. And we can also see the spine, which is marked as ST. So the aorta is seen to the left side of the spine, while the vena cava is seen to the right side of the spine. So the left sided structures are the stomach and the aorta, and the right sided structures are the liver and the vena cava. This is the same transverse view of the abdomen, discussing a little bit more about the visceral situs. So let us look at the 2 vessels in this view. So the blue circle is showing the inferior vena cava, which is on the right side. The red circle is showing the aorta, which is seen on the left side. So you notice the relationship of the aorta and the IVC. The IVC is right side and anterior to the aorta. So it's very important to remember it is right and anterior to the aorta. So whenever this relationship is not normal, or if the IVC is posterior, or if the IVC is not seen, or if the IVC and aorta are both on the same side, we can suspect a major pathology of the cardiac position and the situs, which is typically known as the heterotaxy. So we will be seeing an example of such situs abnormalities in my next lecture. Now we continue our sweep towards the thorax. So we have seen the abdominal situs, which is normal, and now we move to the thorax. So here is again the position of the abdominal situs. We can see the stomach bubble towards the left side, and the liver is on the right side. So we are moving cranially towards the fetus head, and this is the heart. We can see that the apex of the heart is pointing to the same side as the stomach, left side. So this is called situs soletus with levocardia. So this is again demonstrated using this movie. So I will freeze this and then move. Now we can see the stomach, which is on the left side. And when I move upwards, now we can see the cardiac apex is also facing the same side as the stomach. So this is again a demonstration of situs soletus with levocardia. Now most forms of complex heart defects like the heterotaxy or the isomeric hearts have got an abnormalities of the visceroatrial situs and the cardiac position. So this discussion will be continued in the next lecture on anomalies of the 4-chamber view. Now we move on to the 4-chamber view. So this is a scheme for the evaluation of the normal 4-chamber view. So in this cartoon we can see the spine as a white triangle posteriorly. Above that the heart, the 4 chambers is shown. The most posterior is the left atrium and the most anterior is the right ventricle. you notice the blue dot between the spine and the left atrium. So that is the area behind the heart, and that is the descending aorta. So only the descending aorta will be seen. So before we move on to the evaluation of the four-chamber view, we can look at the heart size and the cardiac axis. Now cardiac size can be measured by either biometry or by measuring the circumference or area. I prefer the circumference method, in which we have to trace the area of the entire thoracic circumference first, and then you trace the cardiac area and express it as a ratio, cardiac area by total thoracic area. So roughly the heart is about 1/3 the size of the thorax. The second is the cardiac axis. For measurement of cardiac axis, first you have to draw a line which is perpendicular from the anterior chest wall to the spine, like this. Then you draw a line along the interventricular septum. The angle which is subtended by these two lines is called the cardiac axis. The normal cardiac axis is about 45 degrees. So in congenital heart defects, the cardiac axis can become either deviated to the right or to the left, and it may give you the first clue about the possibility of an underlying congenital heart disease. Now we move on to the apical four-chamber view, and this movie is showing you all the features of the apical four-chamber view. So roughly the heart size can be seen. Then we can see the contractility. You look for fluid around the heart, which is pericardial effusion. Up to 2 millimeters is considered to be normal. In this movie, if you look at the ventricular septum, we can see that there is a dropout just below the valve. This is a false dropout. So what are the things which you need to look for in the four-chamber view? Is it just counting 4 chambers or something more? So that is what we are going to show you in the next slide. So this is a checklist for the four-chamber view. You start with the chamber symmetry. So the left and the right are marked here. The left side and the right side should be similar. Then the entire circumference of the heart we can measure, and the cardiothoracic ratio can be calculated. The flap of the foramen ovale will be facing towards the left atrium. We can see the pulmonary veins joining the left atrium there, shown by the arrows. Then we look at the meeting point of the atrial septum, the ventricular septum, and the AV valves. So this is the central portion of the heart referred to as the crux. The crux of the heart should be intact. Then you see the moderator band on the right ventricle over there. And finally you look at the area between the left atrium and the spine, which you will find only the descending aorta. So this is a full checklist for the evaluation of the four-chamber view. One specific point which I would like to highlight in the evaluation of the four-chamber view is the offsetting of the atrioventricular valves. Now in this movie, which you will see it running shortly, the left and the right are marked. You can clearly see that the left-sided atrioventricular valve is at a higher level compared to the right atrioventricular valve. And you can also see the moderator band on the right ventricle. You can see the foramen ovale very nicely with the flap pointing towards the left atrium. So I'll play the movie. You can see the flap of the foramen ovale well, and clearly you can see that the tricuspid valve is at a lower level compared to the mitral valve. So that is shown in this picture as well, a differential insertion of the AV valves, tricuspid valve having a more lower or apical insertion and a mitral valve having a higher insertion. So this is called the offsetting of the AV valves, and the offsetting is lost in two conditions: the atrioventricular septal defect, where it's a linear insertion of the valves, and corrected transposition of great arteries, where there is a reverse offsetting, that is the left AV valve will be at a lower level. We shall see these examples again in the next lecture on abnormal four-chamber view. Now I told you in the first slide on the four-chamber view that if sometimes you may see a false dropout in the ventricular septum. To overcome the false dropout, which is an ultrasound artifact, you do a slightly axial four-chamber view by rotating the transducer. So here we can see an axial four-chamber view. The septum is more nicely profiled here and there are no dropouts. So that is a normal septum. The crux of the heart is also beautifully seen, which is normal. You complete the evaluation of the four-chamber view by putting color Doppler. This is a radiant flow color. And here specifically you look for the atrioventricular valve regurgitation and also evaluate the ventricular septum for any septal defects. So after the four-chamber view, we move on to the first outflow tract, which is the left ventricular outflow tract. So here is showing the left ventricular outflow tract in grayscale and color. So what is the scheme for normal outflow tract? Again, the heart, the same scheme which we use for the four-chamber view is seen. The spine, which is a white triangle, is most posterior. The anterior chest wall with the right ventricle closest to is shown. The left and right are marked. The first outflow tract which comes from the heart is the left ventricular outflow tract, which is seen like this, moving from left towards the right. Then we have the right ventricular outflow tract, which is a pulmonary artery, which comes from the right ventricle to the left towards the direction of spine. And the important point I would like to make at this point is that the outflow tracts cross each other as they come out of the heart. Very important to remember, outflow tracts cross each other. So first we see the left ventricular outflow tract. So from the four-chamber view, we move more cranially, and to get the LVOT, you often do a clockwise rotation as well. So this is the LVOT. From four-chamber view, we can see it very nicely. And this is the axial view where you can see the LVOT, LV to aorta. Now, an important anatomical aspect of the LVOT is that we should look for this feature called septo-aortic continuity. So the dotted line is showing this ventricular septum, and this bold continuous line is showing the anterior wall of the aorta. So this is an apical four-chamber view with the cranial tilt and clockwise rotation profiling the LVOT. So we can see that there is a continuity between the two lines. So here again, this is the ventricular septum and this is the anterior aortic wall. So they are continuous. So if there is any discontinuity between the two, septo-aortic discontinuity, that is one of the most important pathognomonic features of a common congenital heart defect called tetralogy of Fallot. So we will see this in the third lecture of the webinar series. So here again in the movie we can see the septo-aortic continuity, which is beautifully demonstrated in this 4D rendered picture. We can see the septo-aortic continuity here. Then color flow evaluation, we can see the four-chamber color with no valve regurgitation, and we can see on the left side the LVOT, the blue flow, and here nicely the left ventricular outflow tract flow is seen here, which is normal. So in this movie, the crossing of the outflow tracts is well demonstrated. So let me freeze this and begin with the four-chamber view. Now we see the left ventricular outflow tract first, and then when I move further anteriorly, you see the RV outflow tract which are crossing each other. And this ends in the three-vessel view. So this is a rendered image of the two outflow tracts, and the crossing is very nicely seen. Behind you see the aorta, and on top the right ventricular outflow tract. Now we move on to the evaluation of the right ventricular outflow tract. So the right ventricular outflow tract is the pulmonary artery. This is obtained from with a further cranial tilt after the LVOT, and here you need to do an anti-clockwise rotation, not a clockwise, anti-clockwise rotation. So you remember that the LVOT and the RVOT are not in the same plane. LVOT is clockwise rotation from four-chamber and RVOT is anti-clockwise rotation. And the characteristic feature of the right ventricular outflow tract of pulmonary artery is that it divides into two branches. The right pulmonary artery, which goes towards the right side close to the aorta, and the left pulmonary artery which moves to the left towards the spine and descending aorta. So this is again the RVOT with branch pulmonary arteries shown in color. The RPA is seen going towards the right, while the LPA goes straight towards the descending aorta in the leftward direction. After that we move on to the three-vessel view. The three-vessel view is a cross-sectional view high in the fetal chest, where you can see the relationship of the aorta, MPA and SVC. So this picture is showing a dissection specimen of a normal fetal heart. The left and the right are marked in the cartoon above. The left atrial appendage and the right atrial appendage are also marked, LAA and RAA. So the pulmonary artery is onto the left side and the SVC is onto the far right side, and between the two you find the aorta. So this is the anatomical landmarks of the three vessels in the three-vessel view. So when you do the imaging, you see the three-vessel view typically this way. You can see three vessels. The left side is PA, the middle is aorta, and then you see the SVC. So this is another 3-vessel view. Here the left is marked here, PA, aorta in the middle, and SVC. Here I have measured the arteries as well. How do you interpret the 3-vessel view? It is good to remember the acronym PAS for the 3-vessel view. PAS stands for P for pulmonary artery, A for aorta, and S for SVC. So left to right you have PAS. Anterior to posterior you have PAS. And largest to smallest you have PAS. So PA is left, anterior and largest. SVC is right, most posterior and smallest. So let us see two examples. So this is an apical four-chamber views equivalent 3-vessel view. So left and right are marked. So most leftward is PA, middle is aorta, and SVC is the most on the right. So we can see the size also. The largest is PA, aorta is midway, and SVC is smallest. Another, when there is a basal 3-vessel view, a basal 4-chamber view, you can see the 3-vessel view correspondingly like this. And here on the left side, we see PA, right is the smallest SVC, and then you see the midway aorta. So 3-vessel view is a very important view in the evaluation of fetal heart, and you should remember and the different types of 3-vessel view you get corresponding to the 4-chamber view. You can get it like a picture on the left or a picture on the right, and everything is fine. Now we move on to the last view on the IceWork protocol, which is a 3-vessel tracheal view. So this is a view which is more cephaloid from the 3-vessel view. The connection of the two arches can be visualized, and both the arches can be seen on the same plane. So here in this picture, which is a rendered view, we can see on the left, which is marked as L, the pulmonary artery is continuing as a ductal arch. Middle you see the aorta, and outside somewhere around the 3 o'clock position you can see the SVC with no color. If you see at around the 6 o'clock position of this picture, a chalky white structure, that's a spine, and just above the spine you see a circle, that is a trachea. So here the trachea is seen onto the right of the ductal and aortic arch. In this view, on anterior aspect, somewhere around the 12 o'clock position, when you image, you may sometimes see the thymus as well. So the importance of the 3-vessel tracheal view is that it enables visualization of both the ductal and the aortic arch in the same picture. So this is the 3VT view imaging. Again, you can see the ductal pulmonary artery continuing as ductal arch and the aorta continuing as aortic arch meeting together. And here is a movie. We can see the arches joining together very nicely. The V formation is seen, and we can also see the color flow is the same in both the arches. How do you interpret the 3-vessel tracheal view? So both the arches will form a V-shaped confluence. The V will be to the left of the spine and left of trachea. The color flow will be same in both the arches, and this is extremely important. This means that the blood is flowing in the normal direction out of the heart. If there is a reverse flow in one of the arches, which means that the normal one is blue and the abnormal one is red, that means that there is severe obstruction onto the red side. So the anomalies of the 3-vessel and the 3VT view we will discuss in the 4th lecture of the series with examples. So this movie is showing us the entire sequence from the LVOT towards the 3-vessel tracheal view. So let me stop, freeze this, and go back and begin with the LVOT now. This is the LVOT, and this is the right ventricular outflow tract. Then you see the 3-vessel view and 3-vessel view here, and then the 3-vessel tracheal view. So these structures are all coming close to each other, one after the other, and unless we are very careful with the sweep, do it slowly, deliberately, we may sometimes overlap and miss the interpretation of all the views. So from the LVOT, more cranial sweep, we see LVOT, the RVOT, the 3-vessel view, and the 3-vessel tracheal view. First do in grayscale and then repeat the evaluation in color. Now we move on to the final protocol, which is the detailed fetal echo. So this is the third case, which is a 36-year-old third gravida. History of diabetes in the first trimester of pregnancy. Previous baby had heart defect, which required surgery. 18-week extended basic screen as per the IceWork protocol. The fetus is suspected to have a heart disease, and this patient has been referred to a fetal cardiologist for its expert opinion. So there are multiple risk factors: maternal age, diabetes in first trimester, previous child with heart defect, and 18 weeks extended basic screen, heart defect suspected. So we have to follow a different approach for the evaluation of the fetal heart in a fetal echo. And it is not a single plane approach, which I will come to in the subsequent slide, but it is rather called a segmental approach. So the various segments of the fetal heart are the situs, which is called a visceroatrial situs. Then the atria. So these two are often considered as one segment. Then we have the ventricles, and then we have the great arteries. Connecting the three segments, we have two connecting segments. One is the atrioventricular junction or the atrioventricular canal, and then the ventricular arterial junction, also called the infundibulum or conus. And then we have the systemic veins draining into the right atrium and the pulmonary veins draining into the left atrium. So this is the scheme for a fetal echocardiography, exactly like what we do for a pediatric echocardiography. And we use different techniques like grayscale, color Doppler. Now, planes of imaging in ISO protocol, we spoke only about the transverse plane. But in this, we have to use additional planes like the longitudinal or the sagittal plane, and also certain specialized short axis views, which I will come to. Now, you begin with the ISO protocol sweep in the transverse plane. So you begin with the abdominal situs, the four-chamber view, the left ventricular outflow tract, the right ventricular outflow tract, the three-vessel view, and the three-vessel tracheal view. So this should be done as standard for fetal echo. After you have completed this, you move on to the sagittal plane, where you look at three structures. The first is the ductal arch, which is shown in this picture. So ductal arch is just a continuation of the pulmonary artery into the descending aorta. There are two features which help us in identifying the ductal arch. One is a typical shape, which is like a hockey stick, which you can see in this picture. And the second important feature is that there are no branches coming off from the ductal arch. Then the next arch which you see in the sagittal or longitudinal plane is the aortic arch. And the aortic arch is not found in the same plane as the ductal arch. You need to do a slight rotation in the vertical axis. So the features of the aortic arch is that it's more rounded and it's like a cane handle, as we can see here. And you can see the branches to the head and neck in the aortic arch, which is beautifully seen here. So let's compare the two arches. So on the left side, on the we see the ductal arch, which is no branches and like a hockey stick, while the right side, which is sepia background, we can see the aortic arch, which is more like a gentle curve, cane handle, and the branches are coming off from that. So this is the two ways by which you can distinguish between the two arches, the shape and the presence of branches. Now you can put color flow into the aortic arch, and you can see beautiful picture of the aortic arch, cane handle appearance with the branches also coming off from it. The third view in the sagittal plane is a bicaval view, where you look for the connection of the superior and inferior vena cava into the right atrium. You can also see the right atrial appendage. Color flow is also used to confirm that the IVC and SVC are normal and patent. You should not forget to evaluate the pulmonary veins, and which is typically done in the four-chamber view. Here you put the color onto the left atrium, which is the area of interest. You can use specialized color formats like the high definition flow or low flow, and you put the PRF at a low scale, about 1.3, and then you can see the pulmonary veins draining into the roof of the left atrium, as shown in the arrow. The next picture, which is an axial four-chamber view, we can see several pulmonary veins, at least 3 of them, draining into the left atrium. And the bottom right is a rendered picture in which you can see 3 pulmonary veins draining into the left atrium. One specialized view is the short axis view of the outflow tract, which is obtained by rotating through 45 degrees in the LVOT-RVOT view. So it is somewhere between the transverse and the sagittal view, somewhere midway. Here in this view, you can see the aorta as a circle in the center, and the right ventricular outflow tract will be wrapping around the aorta like what is called a circle and sausage view. The RVOT is characterized by the fact that you can see it dividing, bifurcating into the right and the left pulmonary artery. This is an excellent view in conditions like tetralogy of Fallot. Then sometimes you may get a short axis view of the ventricular septum. This is typically again obtained by an anterior tilt from the aortic arch view, above anteriorly, with a slight anti-clockwise rotation in 45 degrees. And you may get this view. This is not really needed in most cases, but it's a good view to look at the ventricular septum. So the technique is to sweep upwards in the antero-posterior direction from the sagittal view of the aortic arch. You may need to do a slight anti-clockwise rotation by 45 degrees to get this view. And if you put color, the entire muscular ventricular septum can be seen in a very nice manner. Now we quickly move on to the cardiac biometry. Now cardiothoracic ratio I have already explained. The other measurements which we can take include the valve annulus, which is semilunar valves in systole and atrioventricular valves in diastole, the main pulmonary artery and ascending aorta, the right and the left ventricular length, the aortic arch and isthmus, the right ventricle and left ventricle, end diastolic dimension and end systolic dimension. So these are the sites in which you do cardiac biometry. So in the 4-chamber view, you can look at the length of the RV and LV. In the diastolic frame with the valve fully opened, you can measure the diameters of tricuspid and mitral valve. In the 3-vessel view, you measure the main pulmonary artery and aorta. In the 3-vessel tracheal view, you measure the ductus and isthmus. You can calculate the isthmus-duct ratio. In the sagittal view of the aortic arch, after the final branch of the aortic arch, you can measure the isthmus. Now there is this concept called Z-score or Z-score. This compares your measured value against the expected value for the period of gestation and thus gives you a number. A smaller negative number means your measured value is smaller for expectation. A more positive number means it is larger. So the normal range is -2 to +2. Anything below -2 is small, while anything above +2 is larger. In the modern ultrasound equipments, if you enter the last menstrual period, the gestational age automatically comes, and if you make the measurement, the algorithm will calculate the Z-score for you. So it's extremely useful and very, very objective. The evaluation of the fetal heart rate and rhythm is beyond the scope of this lecture. So quickly I will tell you the technique. You do the LVOT Doppler, which is called the inflow-outflow Doppler. And you get a waveform like this. So here you see two small waves called the E and the A on the mitral inflow and a V wave, which is aortic outflow. So for every inflow there should be an outflow. You can measure the time taken for the cardiac impulse to travel from the atria to ventricle. That's called the AV interval. Normal is about 140 is the upper limit. Here is normal. So this is an important part of the assessment of the cardiac rhythm. So with this, I will conclude the protocol for fetal echocardiography, the additional views in longitudinal plane or sagittal plane and the extra views and the assessment of the heart rate and rhythm and biometry. Now we move on to the specialized techniques in a very brief manner. So first is 3D, 4D fetal echocardiography. So this will give you planes which are not accessible by 2D, a depth perception which is not attainable by 2D, and this will help in the evaluation of complex intracardiac anatomy with spatial relationships, particularly in conditions like double outlet right ventricle. The extracardiac vasculature like aortic arch, ductal arch, systemic and pulmonary veins can be very, very precisely evaluated. We will see some examples in our talks which come later. And the best part is that it permits the offline analysis, and sometimes it gives us new information, particularly like an hidden TAPV, anomalous pulmonary vein drainage. It permits us to transfer the data set to a remote center for analysis by an expert, and it is a very useful teaching tool. So there are 3 steps in this process. The first is to acquire, and the acquisition is basically done in a reference plane, which is usually the 4-chamber view. There are certain parameters like the acquisition angle, the duration of acquisition, which are all adjusted according to the gestational age. Then the middle picture shows you the display, which is a multi-planar display. The 3 planes are the A plane, which is the reference plane, the B plane, which is 90 degrees orthogonal, and then the C plane, which is a coronal view of the heart at the level of the crux. And then the last is a rendering. And here the coronal plane is rendering to give us the basal view of the heart at the level of the atrioventricular valve. Any plane of interest can be rendered. So this gives us certain guidelines for acquisition. The reference plane is usually the 4-chamber view at the chest. You can also use the sagittal view for the arches, veins, etc. The region of interest box has to be fixed inside the reference plane and include the fetal chest till skin. The angle of acquisition depends, so it should cover from inferiorly the stomach up till the neck vessels. So in early pregnancy, the angle is usually about 20 degrees, while in late pregnancy, we can go up to 40 degrees. And the quality that is what is called the duration. It's typically in spatiotemporal image correlation, we talk about the duration of acquisition. We can take 7.5 second clip, 10, 12.5 or 15. The longer the duration, you get more material, but if the baby moves, you can have more motion artifacts also. So these are some of the technical tips for the acquisition of the data sets. One of the most important principles is that before you acquire a 3D data set, you have to get an excellent 2D image. So you have to optimize the 2D image to the best possible way before you go on to the 3D. So one thing which I find it useful is what is called as tomographic ultrasound imaging, or TUI. So in this, by using a volume data set, we can actually showcase the entire cardiac anatomy in a single display picture. So in this, we can see from the top panel, we can see 4-chamber, then we see the LVOT, then we see the RVOT, and the final picture in the bottom middle panel, we can see the 3-vessel view. And the same images are displayed with color. All the images are seen. So in TUI, that's the advantage. It permits the display of multiple images of the heart in a single picture. So the interest-life distance depends upon the duration of gestation. You can use it at 2.7 for second trimester, up to 4 in third trimester, and so on. So this is a very useful display with the 3D, 4D principles. Now, the same 3D volume data set can be used to render and get pictures of the fetal heart. Like this is really lovely pictures. On the top panel, you find the normal 4-chamber view, the intact crux of the heart is seen. Then in the middle, you see the 4-chamber view in color. Then the crossing of the outflow tract is seen. Lower panel shows us a 3-vessel tracheal view. In the middle, you see the aortic arch, and in the bottom right, you see the pulmonary veins draining into the left atrium. A few slides about the cardiac function. So when you talk about cardiac function, there are 3 aspects. One is the systolic function, which can be assessed by various methods like ejection fraction, fractional shortening, myocardial motion, myocardial deformation like strain rate, and so on. Diastolic function, which is by Doppler, diastolic annular peak velocities, venous Doppler, and global function, which is usually done using the myocardial performance index, also called a TIE index. So I want you to do this, which is very useful and very easy to do. This is called the myocardial performance index. It gives us an overall idea about the global cardiac function. So what you need to do is to get a spectral Doppler of the LVOT, just like what we saw in the rhythm. So you see the 2 waveforms, the E and the A waveform, and what you have to do is at the end of the A wave, there will be a small notch, which is where the valves will close after diastole. And there you measure the first, from that to the beginning of the V, you measure the isovolumetric contraction phase. And then after the systole is over, again you see a small notch, which is here. And there, from that to the beginning of the next E, you can measure the isovolumetric relaxation time. And then you take the ejection time, which is from the beginning of the systole to the end of systole. That is the beginning of the aortic wave to the end of the aortic wave. So on the numerator, you have the isovolumetric contraction, ICT, IRT, and then on the denominator, you have the ejection time. The normal value of the myocardial performance index is 0.28 to 0.44. This gives us an overall idea about the cardiac function. Now, if you need to do other specific methods, you can use this, which is called a TAPC, a tricuspidal annular excursion. This is done in 4-chamber view using M mode. You put the cursor along the lateral aspect of the tricuspid annulus and put the M mode. The movement will be seen like the excursion which you see, and you can measure the excursion. And that gives us an indicator of the right ventricular function. The atrioventricular relationship can be ascertained, very useful for the arrhythmias, and in the same four-chamber view using the M mode, we can measure the left ventricular function using methods like ejection fractional shortening, etc. Now with the stick, ventricular volumes can be measured in end systole and end diastole. So this is end diastolic volume and this is end systolic volume. From these you can calculate stroke volume, ejection fraction, cardiac output, etc. Even though these look very attractive, they are highly prone for errors because the fetal heart volumes are very small and hence errors are very likely. A newer application which has come for cardiac function is the fetal heart quantification software, which gives us not only the global ventricular function but also regional function. A lot of research papers are coming. I don't have much expertise with fetal HQ, that's why I have not included slides on that, but it's again a very new technology finding novel applications. To summarize, a basic evaluation of the fetal heart by standard protocols is mandatory in all pregnancies. So if it is at a very community level mass screening, you use the 3-view technique, the 4-chamber, the outflow and 3-vessel. So if it is at a mid-trimester anomaly scan, you follow the ISOAP protocol. Systematic segmental approach of the cardiac chambers as connection is the preferred approach in fetal echocardiography. Color flow mapping and newer techniques like HD and radiant flows add vital information to 2D grayscale imaging. Newer techniques like 3D, 4D stick rendering and cardiac function assessment offers promise in abnormal hearts with complex situations. So I would like to leave you with this picture of Kochi, which is a famous Chinese fishing nets in Cochin, which is a very major tourist attraction. Now, because of the coronavirus epidemic, the whole tourism and been completely severely affected. Nobody is able to move anywhere. So we all have to sit and enjoy each other through webinars and web-based meetings. We do hope that this distressing times will pass soon. Let us offer a prayer once again for that. And thank you very much for listening to this. I will take questions from you over the next 15 minutes. But after that, I will see you again after 3 weeks with the second talk of my webinar series, which is Abnormal 4-Chamber View. Thank you very much.
Oh, hi everyone. Thank you so much for attending the webinar. We will leave you with this box so you can leave your questions for him, and he will be able to respond to some of these questions via email. I apologize. There seems to be a connectivity issue for some of you. I believe Prof had a little bit of connectivity issue as well, and he was unfortunately dropped off at the last minute. So feel free to drop your questions if you have any on this box. We'll leave it on for about 5 to 10 minutes, and then we'll close the webinar from there. So go ahead, send us your feedback, send us your questions, and we'll pass it on to Prof. Balu. Thank you. Thanks everyone for all the questions. Just to reiterate, we will share the recording of the webinar at a later period. But for now, Prof. Balu will be very happy to answer any questions that you may have in regards to the current lecture. He will drop you email, or we will reply your questions via email. Feel free to leave your questions, as we will be closing the session in about 5 minutes. Thank you.